Welcome to Mac Talk, a Middle Tennessee podcast from Mont Haven Arts and Cultural Center in Hendersonville, Tennessee. I'm Barry Ellis, board chair here at the MAC. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Ponce Law, Justice for All, Middle Tennessee's premier personal injury law firm.
Thank you, Barry, and welcome everyone to Mac Talk. I'm your host, John Pitcher. We like to think of the MAC as a cultural town square where we encourage everyone to be their creative best. Barry, you're one of the most creative people I know. What have you been up to lately?
Thank you, John. So, with this week being the week that it is of Thanksgiving, the creative things that are going on are usually in the kitchen. So, one of the things that I make a lot of the food for Thanksgiving holiday, and I like to come across new things. And one of the topics of today's discussion is a cookbook. And so I love that there's stories behind recipes and everything else. And I just got one from a person that was telling me about a Kentucky Derby pie, which I've never had before and never really even heard of.
Kentucky Derby pie.
And
okay.
I love pecan pies, because I was talking about pecan pies. I make my own pecan pies. And they said, well, you need to try a Kentucky Derby pie. It's like a chocolate pecan pie. Sort of. So I said,
I want it.
Well, let me look at the recipe. And they said, well, I have it written down on this. And they had a picture of it, of a picture. And so I got a picture of a picture of a picture of a picture now of this recipe. And I'm very excited about trying this out because it looks delightful.
And I'm very excited about eating it after you've tried it out. So save me a slice, please.
100%.
Yeah, and I should add that Barry is a Louisiana chef maestro, so it's going to be absolutely delicious. Well, let's go ahead and introduce today's guest. She's Nashville music journalist and author Deborah Evans Price. Over the course of her 40-plus year career, Deborah Price has worked for such outlets as Country News, American Songwriter, and Billboard. She's interviewed countless artists, including Willie Nelson, Charlie Daniels, Alan Jackson, and Taylor Swift. In 2023, she received the Country Music Association's Media Achievement Award. Deborah is at Mont Haven to talk about her new book, Country Faith Christmas, 50 Reflections and Recipes from Leading Country Music Stars. It's a great read, and it's definitely going to have me cooking over Christmas. Deborah Evans Price, welcome to Mac Talk.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Mont Haven is one of my favorite places in the world.
Okay. Well, let's jump right into it. Tell us about your new book, Country Faith Christmas. What are people going to see when they open up the cover?
This book was so much fun to put together, John, and I'm so excited about people getting a chance to check out the recipes and Christmas memories. We've got 50 country artists, everybody from the Oak Ridge Boys, who I've loved forever, to newer artists like Lainey Wilson, Joe Nichols, tons of people, Jimmy Wayne, Reba, Brad Paisley, Luke Bryan. And in each of the chapters, we ask them about their favorite Christmas memories, like something that happened in their childhood. We ask them about the Christmas traditions that shaped their childhood, and then what they do with their families today, what they've carried on. And there's also great recipes. Everybody turns in their favorite Christmas recipe.
Okay. Well, let's get into the actual sausage making here, so to speak. Did you ask the artists here to submit their Christmas memories to you in writing, or did you interview them? And how did they do the recipes and all these other things? How did you make this book?
I asked people to do interviews. Okay. And so that was great, because then we'd get on the phone or we'd do it in person and talk about their favorite memories. And then I'd have them submit photos. Like, one of my favorite photos in the book is Alan Jackson sitting on Santa Claus's lap. It is just adorable. And then there's a picture of Lainey Wilson and her horse. There's cute pictures of, Dwayne Allen, the Oak Ridge Boys, in a little cowboy outfit when he was a kid. And so the photos were fun to collect, but those came after the interviews.
Right.
And yeah, I was thinking, I did a previous book just called Country Faith. Mm-hmm. And that book is everybody's favorite scripture and why it means so much to them. Mm-hmm. So for that book, John, I had some people that said, I really kind of want to wrestle with this and write it and send it to you. So we did that. But for this book, it's pretty much all interviews.
So you we're able to do follow-ups and really get the nuance of their memories. That's really great. And there's a logical sort of follow-up to the original book, Country Faith.
Definitely. And actually, we did the first two books like 10 years ago. And so this is an updated version. It's got some of the original content that I love too much to let go of, you know, like Charlie Daniels. Charlie is, of course, has passed a few years ago, but he's still in the book, and his chapter is like one of my favorites. So the original Christmas book, I think, maybe had 30 artists. Then this new Christmas book, 10 years later, has got 50. Okay. So it's got some of the original ones and then a whole lot of new ones.
Well, in terms of the recipes, were you offering guidance to the folks in terms of what they submitted? Because I noticed that we have a number of desserts, we have a number of casseroles, but you can make a full Christmas dinner from all the recipes in this book if you want to. So what did you ask them to do?
The reason I'm laughing, John, when you ask if I give them guidance, I am not a good cook. My husband, Gary, is an amazing cook. Okay. We'll be married 40 years next summer, and I'm a chunky girl, and this is 40 years of good eating. I tell everybody it's, all that great cooking. So, no, I mean, I was laughing at the thought of me giving anybody guidance in the kitchen. But, no, I just asked them to submit their favorite recipe. And I didn't, even though we got a lot of chili recipes, we got a lot of cookie recipes, I didn't say, no, we already got chili, or, we already got a lot of Christmas cookies. I just let people submit what they wanted. And it turned out to be a really good balance.
It was a good balance. Well, I mean, you can make a full dinner. Alan Jackson delivered his fruit salad, which struck me as delicious. I love Darius Rucker's okra soup. And of course, Marty Rabin has the turkey and dressing recipe, which is my wife. That's the first thing she asked when she looked at the book, didn't even open the cover yet. She says, "Was there a turkey and dressing recipe in there?" I said, "Well, it sure is." And of course, there's Charlie Daniels and his wife Hazel. Hazel's an amazing friend here at Monhaven, and she's got her sweet potato dish, which I'm going to make.
Oh, I know, that looks so good.
Yeah, Rodney Atkins has his snowball cake for the dessert. And the first thing I'm going to make are Craig Morgan's deviled eggs.
Oh, I know. Don't those look terrific?
They are. I was thinking this is like the perfect recipe for deviled eggs. So I can't wait to do it.
There's some great ones in there. And one of the things I love, like in Lainey Wilson's recipe, it's a Christmas cookie recipe. So there's all the usual flour, sugar, vanilla, that kind of stuff. But she also said, and add a handful of love. How sweet is that?
Of course. Well, I think that's probably the secret ingredient, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, of the 50 memories in this book, is there one that was especially appealing to you, that really struck home?
One of the ones this actually made me cry when Joe told me, and I cry every time I read it. Joe Nichols talked about growing up in this tiny town in Arkansas, Pea Ridge, Arkansas. And one Christmas, his mom set him and his little brother down and said, we're just not going to have anything for you for Christmas. She was a single mom and, struggling to take care of 3 kids. And so the boys just, they took it well and just kind of resigned themselves to the fact that, it was not going to be a good Christmas. And somebody at church found out what was going on with the family. So Christmas Eve, they get this big delivery of food and gifts. And, Joe said he will always remember the kindness of that community when his family was struggling. And I thought, it's just such a beautiful story. And I appreciate that he shared that.
Yeah. I think the one that really struck me was Charlie Daniels. Because it just inspired me. Because it really said a lot about him as such a creative personality himself. Because he had his Carolina Christmas Carol short story that he always would read, and it was in demand at the family. And he'd also read the Nativity story from the Gospel according to St. Luke, and I was really taken with how he zeroed in, and a few other stars did too. But he really zeroed in on the prominence of the shepherds and the importance of that setting for the birth of the Messiah. I thought that was very perceptive of him. And
I agree.
Really captured, I think, the story for me and inspired me to go back and reread it. Yep. So very wonderful.
Oh, I know. I love Charlie. He, I miss him. I will always miss him. He was, I've interviewed a lot of people over the years. That's my job, and I've been blessed to be doing this for 40 years now. But Charlie sent flowers when my son was born. And every interview first thing he'd say, "What's Trey doing? How's his grades when he was in school? How's his job when he started working for UPS?" And at one point he was trying to get promoted from being in the warehouse to being a driver, and so we were at the opera, and Charlie said, "Now, Debbie, you got a video thing on that phone. You make videos from your phone, can't you?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "All right, let me know when you're ready." And he did this whole tutorial about, "Trey, you got to push in the clutch, do this, do that," and did a whole tutorial on driving a stick shift. He goes, "You can do it, son. Get it done."
Wow.
So I love him. He and Hazel, just wonderful people.
I actually ran into his violin, of all things, about a decade or so ago. It was at one of the violin shops around Vanderbilt.
Wow.
And he had brought it in for some servicing, and I was amazed at it because it was like a black fiddle, totally covered in white resin.
Oh.
It just showed how much this man had worked with. This was a working violin. This was not just some extra instrument for the band. This is something he really put his heart and soul into, and I love that because it said a lot to me about just his work ethic at music.
Oh, yeah. Nobody worked harder than Charlie. And the fans felt all that excitement every time he stepped on stage. He was incredible.
Yeah. So what recipes do you think you will be trying out?
John Barry's mother-in-law, Carol, has a sweet potato recipe in there that looked really good, too. Sweet potato souffle. And a lot of people are like, "Ooh, souffle, that's going to be too hard." But her recipe looks like I think I might could do it.
Okay.
And you mentioned before Rodney Atkins and the snowball cake.
That
really
good.
sounded good.
And it's they give the ingredients and then they sort of give the instructions on how to do it. So it's a very, very effective. These folks, I guess, they pulled out their favorite recipes from their own cookbook, so it was really nice.
Oh yeah, and Tanya Tucker has a chicken chili recipe
I
thought
that.
sounded
that
good.
That sounded really good.
Yeah.
I think it's 4 chicken breast halves, I think it is, and I've already memorized some of them. We're speaking with Nashville music journalist Deborah Evans Price. We'll be back after this important message.
Ponce Law, Middle Tennessee's premier personal injury law firm, reminds us that the arts are important for many reasons, including communication, understanding, emotional well-being, confidence, and creative thinking. Art is all around us, from the layout of streets to the planning of communities and cities. Art can help us understand our history, culture, and the experience of others. Ponce Law is proud to encourage arts education. For more information on art classes available for children and adults, visit monthavenarts.org. For questions concerning personal injury law, visit poncelaw.com.
We're back with Nashville music journalist Deborah Evans Price. If Deborah Evans Price was the 51st feature in this book, if you include it yourself, what would your Christmas memory be?
Wow. Oh, that's a great question, John. I hadn't really thought. I think probably one of my favorite Christmas memories, and it's a tradition, is we live kind of out near Nolensville, and we've got just a little bit of land. So we go out every year and chop down our own Christmas tree and drag it back up to the house and decorate it. And that's something we've done for years. Before we lived on this particular piece of property, we had a friend, and he would let us, I can't believe I'm telling this story, he would let us go out to his place and chop down a tree. So one year, by the time I get off work, my husband gets off work, my brother, it's dark, but we decide, okay, we're going to go get that tree with a bunch of flashlights. So we go out, and this was out here in Madison at our friend Ken's place. So we go out, and we find the perfect tree. So Gary proceeds to cut it down. It falls backwards, not the way he'd intended, and knocked the chainsaw into his knee. So his knee is bleeding. The kids are screaming. It was just like pandemonium. So we get out of the woods as quick as we can, get back up to the driveway. Gary just grabbed a towel out of his truck, wrapped it around his knee, said, it's not that bad. Let's go to Sonic, get something to eat. He wouldn't even go to the emergency room. He just kind of duct taped it till he got home, and then he dressed it. And but yeah, so I will never forget. And then when we got it home, like that tree looked good in the dark with a few flashlights on it. That was the ugliest tree we've ever had. But after he almost took his leg off with a chainsaw, we couldn't just toss it. We had to that's going to be the tree all holiday season.
That was your favorite Charlie Brown tree after that.
Yep.
Well, you went through an awful lot to get it.
Yeah, my husband's one tough guy.
Yeah. Well, you are one of Nashville's best-known country music journalists, and so I'm wondering, how did you break into that business so long ago? Because I'm sure there are a lot of people who'd love to do that.
Oh, I love what I do, but it's funny. It wasn't my original goal. I wanted to do hard news. I wanted to be a television reporter, travel the world. So I went to college at LSU in Shreveport, and when I was going to school, I interned for a television station, and had to go to shootings, had to go to car wrecks, and it didn't take long for me to realize God made people stronger that can handle that kind of covering that kind of hard news. I thought, I don't really think that's what I want to do. And at the time, I was working at a country radio station. So I was putting myself through college as a disc jockey. And I thought, I love country music. I love writing. I still wanted to write and tell stories. But working at the radio station, I started interviewing people like the Oak Ridge Boys and Dottie West and Johnny Rodriguez. And I thought, I think I want to move to Nashville and write about country music. So when I got out of school, that's what I did. Been here over 40 years now.
Yeah. Well, what were the first places that you got to work?
Radio. Well, actually, first place I worked when I moved to town was Shoney's. I was a waitress. I worked 2 waitressing jobs, Shoney's and the Fiddler's Inn.
Okay.
And for about 6 months, and I got a job at a book publisher, but it wasn't music related. And then my first industry job was with a magazine called Radio and Records, which is no longer around, unfortunately. But R&R was one of the trade magazines, so it was a great place to work because I met radio personnel, I met artists, I got to know all the record company people, and it was a good springboard to my next job, which I became editor at Country News Magazine.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What are some of your most memorable interviews?
Ooh. I love that question because I've had some doozies. Anytime I've ever interviewed Dolly Parton, it's just amazing. I talked to her 2 weeks ago for an upcoming Woman's World cover. It'll be out around Christmas time. But about 6 months ago, I was at a flea market with my husband and found an old copy of American Songwriter magazine with Dolly on the cover. And it was from April 1990. And I said, Gary, I was working there. I might have, I probably wrote this. And sure enough, it was a cover that I'd written. So 2 weeks ago, and like I said, April 1990, that's when my son was born. And so I'm like, oh, not only is it Dolly, but like it was a really special time in my life. And so a couple of weeks ago, I go to Dolly's manager, his office, to do this interview with Dolly, and I took that copy of American Songwriter. I'm like, girl, we have been doing cover stories for 34 years. And so she signed it for me. And that was just so cool because to have a history like that to where we've probably talked like every year, every 2 years, because she's always got a great project coming out, So that was really cool. But one of my all-time favorites, and it's not country, I am a huge Eagles fan. I mean, who is not? I love the Eagles. Grew up listening to them. So the first time I interviewed Don Henley, I had people telling me, oh, he's a hard interview. This is going to be tough. And so I was scared to death. He could not have been nicer. And it was at the Hard Rock Cafe. He'd been performing a benefit concert, him and Vince Gill and a lot of other people. And we did it backstage after the show. Well, the next day, and of course, after I do that interview, I've called everybody on the plane going, I just interviewed Don Henley. Whoa, that was I really had been wanting to get that interview for a while. But the next day, I'm, working on my computer, and I get a phone call. I said, Deborah, this is Don. And I thought it was my brother pranking me. I'm like, Don Henley's not calling me. I'm like, okay, Brian, I'm on deadline. He goes, no, it's not Brian. It's Don Henley. We talked last night after the show. He said, but if you're too busy, I'm like, oh, no, sir, I have all the time in the world. But he said, last night, it was after the show, and I was tired. He said, but I got to thinking, and there's some things I want to add to the story if you have time. I'm like, of course. And so, he was so specific. There was a book out at the time called Stranger Music, the songs of Leonard Cohen. And he was saying if people want to be a good lyricist, that they should read that book. And he said specifically, and he named a page that he thought was particularly beneficial. And so I loved that because as a songwriter, I think he's brilliant. He's a great vocalist. But I thought everything that he does, he puts a lot of care and attention into, even when it came to giving the readers of American Songwriter good information that would benefit them as they develop their songwriting. I thought, no wonder this guy is so accomplished and successful. He really cares about everything he puts out into the world.
Wow. We had a show here not too long ago featuring the art of Bernie Taupin, who was, of course, Elton's lyricist for many, many years. Mm-hmm. And we asked him, had a group comment session, and we asked him a question about, well, do you consider yourself a poet? My wife's an English professor, and she thinks there's some real poetry in what he did. But he says, no, I don't think I'm a poet. That's an insult to poets. But then he went and referenced, but if there's one guy who is, it's Leonard Cohen. And so I think the people who are really serious about their craft, because it is a craft and an art form, they know who to model after and they know what to do. And also Bernie was really fascinated and started off listening to all the country music people. Because what really attracted him to writing songs, of course, Rocket Man didn't originate from that, but he loved the country music songs because they told stories. So he really considers himself a storyteller, and I think that's been, I think, the consistent power of a lot of country music.
That's true. Country music is known for its storytelling, and people, like you mentioned, Bernie, like people in all other genres of music really respect country music. Like because in addition to country music, I've interviewed everybody from Andrea Bocelli, the opera singer, to John Bon Jovi. And, Bon Jovi in particular loves country music. He's a big Hank Sr. fan.
Wow. We're speaking with Nashville music journalist Deborah Evans Price. We'll be back after this important message.
The folks at Ponce Law remind us that creativity is a natural human behavior. You should never stop doing it. It's part of us. We've been creating since the beginning of time. It's something we know since the day we're born. This message is sponsored by Ponce Law, Middle Tennessee's premier personal injury law firm. Visit them at poncelaw.com.
We're back with Nashville music journalist Deborah Evans Price. You've interviewed people who are not musicians as well. I mean, you've done a little bit of everything. Tell me about some of those most memorable interviews.
Oh, I've always loved Dennis Quaid's movies, and he was in that film I Can Only Imagine, and he'd written a song for that soundtrack. So that's the first time I interviewed him, and y'all, he was so nice, John. My mom was going through lung cancer, and he just obviously I didn't lead with that in the interview, but we kind of got to chit-chatting at the end of the interview, and I had mentioned to him my mom was sick, and he was so kind. He followed up, texted and said he was praying, and just could not have been kinder. And when you're going through a difficult time and somebody just really takes the time to be kind and kind of compassionate, you never forget that. So anyway, I've been blessed to interview him several times since, and he's such a nice guy. Wow. And this past week was the Country Music Awards, CMA Awards, and I ran into Billy Bob Thornton. I've interviewed him a few times, and he is the nicest guy. Oh my gosh, just a good Southern gentleman from Arkansas. I mean, yeah. Trying to think of some. Yeah, I've interviewed Sandra Bullock early in her career. She was just delightful. I've interviewed a lot of chefs, which is funny because I'm not a good cook. But I've interviewed Paula Deen a few times.
Oh, wow.
Emeril Lagasse, Alex Guarnaschelli. Oh, my goodness. Who else? Which is always fun. I usually get my husband like, okay, Gary, I got Paula tomorrow. I got Alex or Emeril. Give me some suggestions on questions.
Wow.
And it's funny, though, because I was telling Alex Guarnaschelli about Gary's spaghetti sauce that he makes for spaghetti. And she was like, oh, yes, yellow tomatoes, that's it. That's so right. And so by the end of the interview, she was like, you mentioned that you don't like to, that you're not in the kitchen, you don't like to cook much. My advice to you is stay out of your husband's way. He's on it. So he loved that.
Wow. Well, let me ask you, do you have any advice for all the young people who will be listening to this who might be interested in doing what you do?
Okay.
What advice would you have?
For one thing, I would say don't rely on AI. Write your own stories. Tell your own stories. I think AI's got everybody a little bit concerned, and it can spit stuff out, but it's not going to have the heart and soul that you put into it. It's not going to have, you want to sit down and have a conversation. And first off, everybody has a story. And some of my favorite things I've done have not just been on celebrities. It's been on everyday people who've had something incredible happen to them and had something to share. So everybody has a story. Always keep your eyes open for the stories around you. As far as breaking into the business, it's a hard thing. But
I think it's harder now, wouldn't you say?
It is.
Because I can remember a time when, because I worked in journalism for many years, and I can honestly say there are a lot of publications that I had worked for, newspapers primarily, that had circulations at one time of about 600,000, that now maybe have a circulation of 30,000. I mean, it's just the print has had a hard time, and that was where a lot of the work was.
Yep.
So maybe people need to be thinking more about creative avenues.
That's true. And I always tell, and I don't know that this is the best route today, but what worked for me was starting local. Like I wrote stuff for the Shreveport Times and Shreveport Journal. And a good thing is offer an editor something that is not easy for somebody on their staff to get. For example, like when the Oak Ridge Boys came to town, I did a story because somebody on the Shreveport Times could have chased down the Oak Ridge Boys, but it was easier just to give the story to a freelancer who already had the connection. So look for something that's unique, like that you can offer an editor that they're going to want to say yes to because their readers are going to enjoy it, and it's going to get clicks. It's going to, so start local, like, and build a portfolio to where when you approach an editor at a major publication, you've got some stories and clips that you can show them. Well, I say clips nowadays, story links,
I remember
But yeah,
clips.
just kind of start and don't be afraid to start small and work your way up because you'll get to where you want to be.
Yeah. We're speaking with Nashville music journalist Deborah Evans Price. We'll be back after this important message.
Promote creativity in your child's life in as many ways as you can. Give them every opportunity possible to be artistic and sharpen their skills. Mott Haven Arts and Cultural Center offers multiple art classes for all ages. Visit them at motthavenarts.org. And if the need arises for a personal injury attorney, remember our friends at Ponce Law, serving Middle Tennessee. That's PonceLaw.com for more information.
We're back with Nashville music journalist Deborah Evans Price. What were some of your more challenging interviews, would you say? Without saying anything that would maybe hurt anybody's feelings.
I would never say anything to hurt anybody's feelings. And the cool thing, John, is like in 40-something years of doing this, I have only had one guy that was obnoxious. That's saying a lot.
That is interesting.
And it was like a 70s pop rock guy that was just, maybe he was just having a bad day.
Oh my God.
Because
I had the same experience.
Okay.
I've had only one. I had experiences that were where the handlers of the person I was going to interview were difficult.
Oh, yeah, that happens a lot.
One of my favorite stories of that is the Washington Post, actually, for my first assignment, sent me out to interview Yo-Yo Ma, the cellist, at a big cello conference in Maryland. And I was there the whole day, wrote about all the little things that were going on. He was the big star. I mean, having, Yo-Yo Ma show up at a cello convention is like having, Bill Gates showing up at a Microsoft convention. It's just like everybody's freaking out. And at the very end, they said, well, he's tired and his schedule's so busy, I guess you won't be able to talk to him.
Oh, no.
And of course, that would have been like my last assignment from the Washington Post too, if I had gone back and told the style section editor that no, there's no Yo-Yo Ma. Yeah. So I just kind of faked it and said, oh, I can't believe you've wasted the time of the Washington Post, and I'm leaving, and we're not going to write anything about you.
Good for you.
And so they said, wait right there. And about a minute later, poor Yo-Yo had these two really big guys on either side of his arm, and he has a cello case on his back, and they were just hauling him over to where I was. And I said, you can interview him in here. And they threw him into a closet. And I went into the closet after him and bumped into his cello case, which was not great. But I think he had like a $3 million instrument inside there. But he was the most charming, wonderful, terrific person I think I've ever met. And just a sweet guy. Just, it wasn't Yo-Yo Ma who didn't want to do the interview. It was, all the guys around him saying, well, we want to handle his time for him.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. That's the hard thing is because even the artists that I know and have their number, I always go through proper channels. I always go through the publicist and the manager and stuff. And those people, it's their job to make things easy on the artist. So a lot of times artists might not even get the request, which is, disappointing, But yeah, I always go through proper channels. But yeah, the handlers sometimes are really hard to get through. And then once you get through to the person, like, oh my gosh, this is great.
Yeah, they're always so wonderful. Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I had one 70s rock star who I won't mention. Maybe I'll put that in a memoir someday. They can read about it in 100 years. But one of the ones that surprised me from the 70s was actually Roger Waters of Pink Floyd actually called me back because he wanted to talk some more.
Oh,
well.
that's a great story.
And it was like, I was kind of like, really? This is like, because you're
awesome.
like, I mean, what, you're like one of the biggest guys of all time. I mean, like almost Don Henley level, so really kind of amazing.
What a testament that is to you and the conversation and your interview skills that you made him feel that comfortable that he wanted to continue talking to you. That says a lot, John.
Sometimes it's talking to people on their own terms,
Yeah.
and finding out what they're interested in,
Yep.
and sort of, and really seeming like you are truly interested.
Oh, yeah, and doing your homework is another thing. Like if they know that you've watched the film or listened to the album and spent time with it, like a lot of times when I'm doing an interview, I'll mention specific songs and like, this line really moved me. I really like this. So then they know that you're invested in what they've created. And that makes them feel a lot more comfortable.
And that is
too.
so huge. That
Yeah.
is so huge for them. Let me ask you one final question, and thank you. I know you've got a lot to do here at Monthaven today, but what is your Christmas memory from this year going to be? What are you guys doing?
I'm so excited. Sorry, a little squeal there.
No, great.
My son got married October 19th. So
Congratulations.
We are so excited. And we love, his name's Trey, and his new wife's name's Ray.
Trey and Ray.
Trey and Ray. And so this will be the first Christmas with Ray, as Trey's wife. And so we're all excited about that.
That's always exciting when the family just keeps getting bigger.
Oh, yes. And she's one of 6 children. And her mom's name's Gloria. Hello, Gloria. And her dad, Jerry. And we love their whole family. I mean, like, we love Ray. I tell everybody she was the one that I prayed that Trey would find. She's just a wonderful girl. But her whole family's terrific, too. So we're looking forward to, having her be part of our family and starting new traditions with her family.
Okay. Well,
But John, before, it's funny, I had to explain why I laughed when you said my most memorable interview, if we have one more second.
Oh, sure.
Andrea Bocelli, the opera singer.
right.
I did not realize he doesn't speak a lot of English. And I was doing him for the podcast, for Jesus Calling. Like, as a freelancer, I write for Woman's World, First for Women, Jesus Calling, Billboard, a lot of places.
And that's another important lesson for, I guess, young writers, is that you have to be able to write for everything.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I always tell people, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Like, try to diversify and have a lot of different outlets. But so when I went to interview him for Jesus Calling, and they were filming this, so when I sat down, they said, oh, this is his wife, Veronica, and she's going to translate. He doesn't speak a lot of English. He speaks some, but so like I would ask the question, Veronica would translate, and then he would like look at me and just, speak in Italian. I thought, I have no idea what he's saying, but I love the way he said it. I mean, it was just, I had no clue. And because we were on such a tight time schedule, she didn't translate his answers back. I just had to move on to the next question. So I had no clue what he said. We had to get his team to like transcribe the interview so that we could put the podcast together.
Gosh.
But he was delightful. I mean, like I got a photo that like I'm so excited to have gotten a picture with him and his lovely wife Veronica.
Wow.
But that was probably one of the most unusual interviews.
That's very challenging. Well, there you may as well just be at the UN and have headphones on with a translator translating in real time.
Yep. Oh, yeah, because that was just so different. Another time I was interviewing Eddie Van Halen, and like 20 minutes in, alarm went off. I thought, okay, my time's up. And I said, I heard the alarm. I guess you need to go. He goes, my manager set that. He said, but I like you, kid. We're just going to keep talking. And I just thought,
wow. Oh, my
'cause,
gosh.
Yeah, I loved Van Halen.
Oh, me too.
What a great compliment.
Wow.
I've been so blessed, John. I guess you can tell. I love what I do. I just feel like everybody has a great story to share, and I just feel very privileged and blessed to get to help tell those stories.
Right. Well, America is the music capital of the world, certainly in the 21st century, and you've gotten to chronicle it. So that is truly a blessing.
It sure is. I'm grateful.
Well, Deborah Evans-Price, thank you for being here at Mac Talk. Your book, Country Faith Christmas, 50 Reflections and Recipes from Leading Country Music Stars, is available now. We'll have a link to it on our website. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, John. You're a great interviewer. I've really enjoyed this.
Bless your heart. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Mac Talk from Monthaven Arts and Cultural Center. Our mission is to educate, elevate, and encourage our community through the transformative power of the arts. If you're interested in transforming your creative life, check out our website at monthavenarts.org. Our guest today was Nashville music journalist Deborah Evans-Price. Our podcast music was written by Nashville composer Christina Spinay. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.